Should terminally ill patients have the right to choose when their life ends? That's the question some state lawmakers are trying to answer with a bill that would allow doctors to prescribe life-ending drugs to terminally ill patients. It's referred to as medical aid in dying. If approved, Illinois would become the 11th state in the U.S. to have such a law on the books. Eligible patients must be 18, have a prognosis of 6 months or less to live. Patients must be deemed mentally capable as well as able to self-administer the medication. Now, opponents say despite the restrictions, these types of laws are still at odds with physicians' responsibilities to care for patients. The bill is called the End of Life Options Act, and it's still in committee with the last weeks of the spring session still ahead. Joining me this morning to talk more about all of this is the bill's lead sponsor and 42nd District Democratic State Senator Linda Holmes, and Director of Advocacy and Intergovernmental Affairs with the ACLU of Illinois, Kadeen Bennett. Ladies, good to see you. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start with you, Senator. You're the lead sponsor here, and
Yes.
if this passes, as I said, it would be the 11th state, D.C. as well, to adopt this. But talk about, you've got personal reasons for getting involved in this. What brought you on board to sort of steer the ship here?
It's something I was sort of raised believing. My father passed away when I was 15. He died of lung cancer. So it was seeing a man who was diagnosed in September who died in January, and you see a man who had become, he was sort of larger than life and such a fun dad, and then at the end he probably weighed no more than 110 pounds laying in a hospital bed, wasting away. That was very difficult. Then fast forward back to 2016, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Diagnosis came in early September. She passed away in October. And she always raised us knowing she never wanted us to do anything to prolong suffering. And I think it was because, of course, she watched her husband, what he went through. So I think she was sort of terrified. And I remember one day I was sitting on the side of her bed and she reached out and she grabbed my arm. She goes, "Don't do anything to prolong this. I just can't." And
There was no way to help at that time.
So it was wonderful having that, knowing that we at least didn't have to prolong her pain. But had my mom had the option, I'm sure she would have chosen to go without suffering as much as she did from pancreatic cancer.
Well, and Senator, I'm going to stay with you for this because I already gave some of the requirements, 6 months or less to live and such, but people watching us who might be interested in this is not a situation where you say, "Hey, doctor, give me the drugs, please." So talk a little bit about, there are certain requirements here, the number of requests and all that. Just briefly walk through that.
Yes, you have to orally request it from your doctor. Then you have to do another oral request that must be at least 5 days in between. Then there needs to be a written request. The written request has to have 2 witnesses, one that cannot be family members and cannot be benefiting from your will should you die. So it's this whole process.
So there are requirements that take you through. Kadeen, let me come to you.
Yeah.
You're with the ACLU, so I think some people might be watching saying, what is the ACLU's role in this?
Yeah, we believe in bodily autonomy, that people should have the ability to make the decisions that affect their lives, including access to health care. And we see this as an end-of-life option for medical care. So right now there's palliative care, comfort care, hospice care, and this is one other option that's available for folks who are terminal. They're going to die. It's not and they're going to die based on a doctor's prognosis of 6 months or less. And we believe that they should have the ability to choose the right option that works for them.
And I'm not turning you into a doctor here, but part of the requirement is being mentally capable.
Yeah.
So do you have a sense of, as you look at this proposal, what that means?
So being able to understand what their options are and to make an informed decision about their health. So that's really important. And if there's a question about somebody's either their mental capacity, doctors already have a process in place when they deal with those kinds of situations. And if it's a question of, is this person depressed? Are they making the decision for the wrong reason? There's also a pathway to assess whether or not they need to get another consulting doctor to deal with those issues. So those protections exist, but that ability to make the right choice for them is really important.
And Senator, some may wonder, who this will serve, because there are states like Oregon, Vermont, which removed residency requirements. Some people could come from other states to go there. That won't be the case in Illinois.
No, we still have a residency requirement.
So, which means people could not come from other states. You've got to live here in order to take advantage of this proposal. And on the policy end of things,
Yeah.
in terms of the arguments, 'cause I think this might be you, Kadeen, but there are opponents out there who say, look, there are already options for people. You have the right to refuse treatment. You can provide certain directives for your own life. And there's a group called Access Living that opposes, that says, what about people with severe disabilities? They can't do anything. And I lost my mom to Alzheimer's. She would not have been able to take advantage of this. It's not perfect.
Well, I would say first that people living with disabilities can also be found to have a terminal illness, and we believe that they should also have the ability to decide for themselves what option they would want to have available to them. So I think the idea that this would be harmful to people living with disabilities, we don't agree with. As the ACLU, we also do work on behalf of people living with disabilities, and we believe that they should be respected and trusted to make the right decision for them.
Senator, there is uncertainty sometimes. I mean, doctors are good. Many of them are good, know what they're doing. But, sometimes you might be given 6 months or less to live, but you live a year. Jimmy Carter has been in hospice care for over a year. I think most people didn't expect that. So what about the diagnostic uncertainty by definition?
It is uncertain, we know that, but doctors are more apt to say it's a longer length of time than a shorter, simply because they don't want to take away hope. And I think we know that, your mental, the way you look at your illness, you can sort of will yourself to keep going and get through things, right? I mean, we know there's a very powerful mind-body connection. But so the doctors usually don't give people less time than they actually have. In rare cases, obviously, Jimmy Carter's an outlier. But I also wanted to address the disability thing, only because I've had MS for 35 years. So I technically have a disability. But just because I have a disability means nothing, because I'm not meeting that criteria that we talked about of having 2 doctors say that I have less than 6 months to live. So this doesn't impact the disability community in any way unless they're diagnosed with a terminal illness.
By the way, Kadeen, there's been research, I know you both know the answer to this, but there's been research suggesting that there have been improvements in hospice care as a result of these kinds of bills, California, Oregon, Hawaii. Do you have a sense from a policy standpoint of why this would lead to those changes? I know Linda does.
Yeah, I think the reality is that hospice care and aid in dying work well together. It's something where, as a patient, you don't have to choose one or the other. And if people are able to have this option, it doesn't take away from their ability to access hospice care. So I think it's just a matter of having the both options kind of rises the boat for both. I do want to just hit on one thing as well. It's just like the people part of it. So I started doing this work with the ACLU when I first started back in 2011, 2012. And over the years, one of the things that's been most helpful to hear is why people want this. So, one of the people that come to mind, Andrew, he passed away. His mom, Susie, is now taking on the mantle for this work. He's somebody who was from Illinois, family is here. He ended up moving to California, was diagnosed as terminal, and he really wanted to come back home and die with his family. He wasn't able to because this option wasn't available. It's a safe option. It's something that other states are doing. And people in Illinois really, 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 really want this. And nobody is forced to take it. You can have a prescription and choose never to use it.
Right.
So it's really important that folks understand that.
And Senator, for a final word, you can comment on that if you want to, but the bill's been introduced in the Senate. There's only a few weeks left. So if you could, in your last comments, what's going to happen?
I would like to see it pass in the 103rd General Assembly, which goes through the end of May, but then also includes veto session in November and lame duck session.
But it's tougher to get it done then.
Pardon?
It'll be tougher to get it done if it waits until then.
It may not. It's because what I'm finding is when you talk about who is in support of this, you can't break it down by ethnicity, you can't break it down by religion, any of that. I have found with the number of people that are contacting me and writing in with their stories and contacting their legislators that it's lived experience. So the more we get out there and talk to people, the more they're reaching out to us, letting us know that they want this option, making legislators a lot more comfortable.
So people who have feelings about this should reach out to your office and others to let them know how to feel about this. Senator and Assistant Majority Leader Linda Holmes and Kadeen Bennett with the ACLU, thanks for being with me. I appreciate it. It's an important topic, and people are going to be fascinated by it if they didn't know about it. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take another break. After this, we're headed to Washington.
A bill that could ban the popular app TikTok is now law. So what happens next? I'll explain. I'm Hannah Brandt in Washington. I'll have that story coming up.